Hello, this is Kyra. In this video, we're going to be looking at a group quote that I have received. This quote in particular has come from Funjet Vacations, one of our Apple Leisure Group vendors and brands. And it is for an all-inclusive resort in Cancun for a wedding, for a destination wedding. Now, I do have a little information here covered up at the top, but we're going to go through this quote. The group quote is for the wedding party. I did remove my client's name from this. It's prepared for, my information is all listed here. And then in the prepared by the group member from Funjet and from Apple Leisure Group who prepared this quote, their information was there too. So let's get into the quote here. This is a quote to Cancun and the Riviera Maya area. The departure date for this group was October 4th of 2023, and this was a hotel-only quote. So we were looking to contract just the resort stay, not any airline or flights, anything like that. We were estimating 50 total passengers and 20 total rooms. When you go to request a quote, they do want this information. It can be very general, though. It does not have to be exact. And all that we have in this quote is related to the Ocean Riviera Paradise All-Inclusive Resort, okay? So that is the resort that this quote specifically came from. It's important to note that all rates are retail per person. So all the rates that we're going to see here are on a per person basis. So every room type at this resort is listed out in this quote. And we have the information. So let's start with the junior suite. It's also important to note that the shared round trip transfers are included. Now, these are shared transfers, so you do have the option to upgrade to nonstop transfers where the clients will be the first ones getting off that transportation. But when you have a shared transfer, you could stop at multiple resorts before you get to the one that you get off at. So it is a small inconvenience, but the option to upgrade will be there at booking time. So we have the length for 3 nights through 7 nights at different occupancy levels based on what the room accommodates. So this junior suite, I can tell since we have a quad rate, this junior suite can hold 4 adults, okay? We have a child rate over here. You can see they classify children from the age of 3 to 11. 12-year-olds and above would be classified at the adult rates, which are over here on the left. If you were to have 2 adults staying for 4 nights, you'd be looking at the double occupancy here for 4 nights. That's $480 per person. So you would double it, and that would be the cost for 2 people to stay in the junior suite for 4 nights, those 2 people being adults. So that's how you read this chart. So we have the junior suite. I'm going to quickly go through so you can see I have the same charts for every room type. We have the pool view. We have the pool view in the family section, the garden view, the pool view. These are in a different building, the Eden building. There's also a jacuzzi room. Now here's an ocean view. That's great. A swim up, so a swim up room. You can start to see that these only have rates up to triple occupancy for adults, and some of these rooms do not allow children. So at this resort, they do not allow children in any swim up rooms or the rooftop room, I believe, because there's a jacuzzi on that in that room category. But for whatever reason, they do not allow children. So please note that. Okay, we have another rooftop with the ocean view. So those are the room categories that they had available for these dates and all the pricing that I would need to know to share with my client. Again, this is the quote for the group. This is not the contract. The contract does look very similar though. So let's get into the amenities. The amenities, the concessions, the comps, these are all of the things that are thrown in by the resort. They are benefits for your group. So what amenities are being offered here? Well, first, it's important to read everything in your quote, but here you'll see it does require a minimum of 10 paid rooms. So if your group does not get to 10 paid rooms, that means that the concessions do not apply. Now, they're also saying a minimum occupancy of 2 guests per each of those 10 rooms. So they're really looking for 10 rooms with a minimum of 20 people, and then you qualify for these concessions. For 40 or more rooms, this hotel is going to offer a separate proposal, is what they're saying here. So let's look at this. This hotel has standard room categories and privilege room categories, which is their club level room categories. So standard rooms, what do we have here? 1 room free per 10 paid in the standard room categories. So the 11th room is free. Now there's a lot of jargon here. It's applied to the lowest value room based on the average number of rooms per night of the group stay. So you don't have to worry too much about this calculation because they will be doing this for you once you are close to travel dates, and sometimes even after travel is completed, they will give you the exact value of your comp. But what this essentially means is that they're looking at the lowest value room category, and they're looking at the average number of rooms per night, and they're doing their calculation to determine the value of the free room. The free room may not be for 7 nights. If most people in the group are staying 4 nights, it's much more likely that the value is going to be a lot closer to 4 nights in one of the lower room categories at the resort. Now, they also say max of 3 free rooms can be earned, and a minimum of 3-night stay is required for this group. So you can only earn up to 3 free rooms. As we did read above, they have a different policy for 40 or more rooms. So if you had 30 paid rooms, you would have 3 rooms free for a total of 33 rooms. We have 1 complimentary upgrade to the next category for every 10 standard rooms. So this means that person in the junior suite can get upgraded to the next level, the junior suite pool view, subject to availability. This is so important, very important that you note this. Subject to availability, which means you will not know until that client gets to the resort whether or not they are going to get the upgrade. I recommend this be a comp that you do not share with your client or your group leader. I would keep this one a secret just for you. And at the end of it, when you know how many of these upgrades you have, I would apply them to maybe some of the VIPs in the group. For this case, it's a wedding, so maybe the parents, maybe someone who had to stretch the dollar really far to be able to go. Maybe you want to offer them the upgrade, submit that, and maybe these guests show up at the resort with a surprise upgrade from their travel agent. That sounds really good, much better than telling your client, you might be getting an upgrade when you get there, but I can't promise it. They might be a little disappointed if they get there and there's no availability. So I personally keep this a surprise from my clients. Now, 1 complimentary upgrade is offered for the VIP or group leader to privilege. So they're offering an upgrade from the standard room to the privilege club level room for every 15 standard rooms. So if you have 30 standard rooms, that means 2 different people can get upgraded to privilege, okay? Now, they are saying here, if it's 6 months in advance, it will be guaranteed. After 6 months in advance, it is subject to availability. So there's another little catch there. It is subject to availability. Hopefully your group is contracting more than 6 months in advance. That certainly is what we hope for. Now let's look at the comps for the privilege room. 1 free privilege room for every 8 privilege rooms paid. So the 9th privilege room is free, applicable to the lowest total value room. This is one of those calculations that they're going to do for you as well. So if you have a lot of guests staying in the club level and the privilege rooms, they're going to get more free rooms, and the privilege rooms do cost more than the standard room. So this is a higher value comp with the 9th privilege room free. Now, here are some terms. Should the group have both standard and privilege, the applicable amenity will apply to the lowest value room category booked. So this is just their way of saying if you have both types, the calculation is going to be just slightly different, okay? Added value for all groups. So this is something that applies to the entire group, and some of these apply to everyone. So we have the welcome drink during check-in for every group member, the VIP amenity for the group leader. In this case, since it's a wedding, it's the couple getting married. They're being offered a fruit plate and bottle of wine. everyone in the group is receiving a 15% spa discount. This is a great thing to market to your group, right? They book into the group, they get this spa discount. When you have a group like this, there's probably going to be someone who goes and books it on their own. They're not going to qualify for the spa discount. So this is a way to make sure that those guests and those group members are booking through you, right? A semi-private dinner for up to 20 people requested prior to arrival if it's for the first night. This is a great amenity for something like a wedding group. So they can do, the wedding party and the immediate family. They can have their semi-private dinner for up to 20 people. And if the group all arrives at the same time before 5 p.m., they can check in together. This is one that is most likely, not going to be taken advantage of because we're not contracting air with this quote. We were just quoting the hotel and the resort stay. So the group members will probably not be arriving at the same time, and they're probably not all arriving on the same day. Now, if you are contracting air, this one is probably a lot more applicable to that group than it is to a group that's flying in from different places at different times on different flights on different days. And this is just to note that that concession is only available when they all arrive at the same time. It does have a note here about reduction too. So let's get more into these policies at this hotel, okay? So let's start with the cancellation policies. You can see here the 10 to 39 rooms. This quote was done estimating 20 rooms, so they put us in this category when it came to the policies. 101 plus days prior to departure, there is no penalty to cancel the entire group. Remember, cancellation is the entire group is not going. That's what cancellation means. Then you start to see in this next time period, the initial deposit is non-refundable, okay? We'll see a little further down what that deposit is, but if they're in this window, they can cancel their group, but they are not going to get their deposit back. Now, the next time period frame is 1 night penalty per room based on category and occupancy. So if we were quoting 10 junior suites and 5 junior suites with a pool view, we're going to get a 1 night penalty based on the value of those rooms that we blocked in our contract. And based on the occupancy as well. So that's going to be a 1 night penalty. So keep in mind, if you are blocking a lot of high cost rooms, the most expensive rooms at the resort, that also means these penalties are going to be higher in this case because 1 night in the privilege room costs much more than 1 night in the junior suite standard room. So do keep that in mind if your group is concerned about potentially canceling. Know the penalties and know the value of these penalties. The next period is a 2 night penalty. Same thing. It's based on which rooms you block in your contract. And then finally, within 40 days of departure, there is a 100% penalty. So everything that's owed in the contract will be due regardless of if the group travels or not. But that's just about a month and a half in advance. I'm pretty sure a month and a half in advance, they're going to know if they are going or they are not going. Hopefully they are going, but they would know by then almost certainly if they are not going. So most likely you would not even be affected by this. If you have that group who may or may not be traveling, try to catch them to make that decision during one of these earlier time periods with the smaller penalties. Now let's see the deposit here. The initial deposit requirement is $50 per person. So if we block 20 rooms, that's going to be assumed as 40 people. Okay, so that's going to be 40 people times $50 per person would be the initial deposit required by the hotel on this quote. The final payment is due 65 days prior to arrival. Okay, so 65 days prior, just over 2 months in advance, you want to make sure every guest is paid in full. Now, when you look at all these time periods here, when you send this quote to your client, you're going to rebrand it with your business information. Make sure that you add padding to each of these time frames. I would give yourself somewhere between 5 and 10 days padding, maybe even 2 weeks padding. You know your group better than I do, but give yourself some padding here because people do wait for the last minute, okay? I really like to do about 10 days padding. I think that's good. If it's a smaller group, 5 days padding might be just well enough for you, but make sure you have them expect that is going to take they're going to have less time than what they truly do, because you'll have that one person who says, I'm sorry, I'm late, what do I do? And they're okay because they're just still in the good period to make this payment, but they're just inside your little cushion, your pad days that you have set. Okay, now this quote does not have intermediary payments in it. You'll notice there's just an initial deposit and a final payment. Some quotes will have second deposits and third deposits, maybe even fourth deposits. If we were contracting air, it would be $50 per seat held as the deposit, okay? That is not what this group did, but that is included in the quote as well. Let's look at the reduction policies here. Okay, 65 days prior to departure and beyond, there is no penalty to make any reductions to this contract. That means if this group needs 20 rooms and we contract 50 rooms, okay, there will be no penalty to remove those rooms. Now, of course, we do have our 10 to 39 rooms. So let's say we book 39 rooms, we block those, and they only end up using 20 of them. So that's 19 extra rooms. We can reduce those from the contract at no penalty. Remember, attrition and reduction is using less rooms and less room nights than you contracted. It is not canceling the entire group. It's just a different need in the rooms and in the nights than what you contracted. So this is very favorable. You have up to just over 2 months in advance to remove any rooms that are not being used. If this were my quote, and this was one of my groups that I did contract and they have traveled, and this group went from start to finish with me, I knew that I could book different room categories. I could book extra rooms because I knew that I had this very favorable reduction policy. If I have all of my guests booked into their rooms and paid for in full, I know which rooms I don't need, and I know that I can get my guests to all be booked over 2 months in advance. So I knew that I could over contract rooms more than I really thought I needed, but then they were there. You never know exactly what room category is going to be right for each member of the group. So it's good to do that. So when you have a policy like this, it's better to just over contract rooms just slightly, just so that they're already there for you and you're going to reduce them before this penalty period starts. Now, the reductions inside of 64 days from December to April and 50 days from May to November are less. Prior to the arrival are 100% non-refundable, okay? So in this case, this group was traveling in October, so it was the 50-day time period, but any reductions done in that time period are 100% non-refundable. So if you do have more rooms and more room nights than are being used, make sure you reduce them before the penalty period starts. There's some additional terms and conditions. When you have a quote, it's so important to read all of these, but what they're basically saying is that they're not going to promise bedding types. They're not going to promise room locations. They're not going to promise people being side by side. It's request basis only. They will do their best to accommodate your requests, but just know that they are not promising that they will be able to fulfill those. That's a very reasonable term and condition to add here. Services not included. It's great to know what's included. It's also very important to know what is not included. They are not including a welcome cocktail, group dinner, special events, the cocktail party, private events. The wedding is not included in this, okay? The services at the spa, the beauty salon, golf, medical services, those are not included. Of course, they do get the spa discount. Room deliveries have a $4 charge per delivery per room, and anything that's not mentioned in this package is not included. That's their blanket statement there as well. Next up, we have the group booking promotions. This is coming from Apple Leisure Group. This is the same sort of stuff you probably see when you are booking in Vax. So there's just an information on a travel agent training. We have the visit tax. This is a Cancun trip. So I would make sure when I send this quote to my client that I copy and paste this visit tax information into their quote as well so that they have it, just in case they are unaware of the visit tax. It's been a few years now, but some people still don't know. Now, there is an air credit that they are offering. I'm not going to read all of this, but if you are going to be booking air, here is some credit for you. It's very important that you read and understand this. And then you have the eco tax. This is something for Cancun as well to add on and let your group know. They're always going to include something on travel protection. We want every group member to purchase travel protection, and we really want every group member to go for the cash refund. But this is the same travel protection that you're going to see anytime you're with Funjet. They're going to copy paste this into your quote for you. And then we have just the final information here. How do we book this group? Okay, so you're going to email them with the following information: the group name, the hotel choice, the number of hotel rooms, and the number of room category types, which room category type specifically you want for which nights, okay? And this is covered in the group training series in more detail. They also just have some information here about their self-help library, their training resources for you, the contact information for the sales team. So once you've reviewed this contract and you've read it and you've circled and marked everything you don't understand and written down all your questions, this is the number you want to call to ask them any of those questions and make sure you understand this quote 100%. So again, to wrap this up, this is an example of an all-inclusive resort quote that came from Funjet / Apple Leisure Group. Really, the groups department does do all of the brands within Apple Leisure Group. So this is very similar to what you'd see for Apple Vacations as well, for example. So this is an Apple Leisure Group all-inclusive resort group quote for this group in October at this specific resort that we went over, okay? So that's one example. Check out my other videos with some other examples as well, and thank you so much for watching.